This is A to Z with Mark Zinno, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it starts now.
Good afternoon. Welcome to A to Z here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, where today I tell you, you set your own terms. Welcome in. We are live here on this Wednesday. Appreciate you guys joining me here on A to Z and making Locked On Sports Atlanta part of your everyday sports listen. Give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On ATL. Of course, you can always follow me at Mark Zinno, MarkZinno. Want to get to the Braves' upcoming schedule after the All-Star break. Some things I think of note to see where this team may be when it comes to the trade deadline as well. One more notable name departs for Live Golf. We'll do that. But I want to start with more of college football from SEC Media Days and beyond. This segment brought to you by our good friends at BetOnline.net. So what came out of SEC Media Days? Is it still going on today? And Georgia will take the podium, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of reaction to that tomorrow. But as conference realignment continues to be the talk about everything that is going on in college football, you know, there is still one thing that we are forgetting. Or I don't mean it's not forgetting, but there is one point that we're continually not addressing enough as the elephant in the room, really, and that's where does Notre Dame end up in all of this? And you know, many people always thought that the Big Ten was the traditional fit for Notre Dame. Many people thought that that's where it would end up given its geographic region to a lot of the other Big Ten teams. Now, the Big Ten all of a sudden has 16 teams in the conference. Do they want to go to 17? Is it fathomable that they could do it? No, I suppose it's not unfathomable that they could do it, but I do think it just, they'd have to ideally want to find an 18th partner. And ideally, you would want to see if, there's a chance that you can make it so that you would go with a 9-1, right? You'd have a 8-game conference schedule and a one game a year rival game, whatever it may be, and that works out when you have 9 other opponents. And if you can get to 20 teams, you have 9 other opponents in your division. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to skin this cat, so to speak. But I only bring all that up to say the hard part is getting Notre Dame to actually come into your conference. And the stakes just got a little bit higher to do so. Now, we know for years the hang-up for Notre Dame in reference to them joining a conference has been their television deal with NBC. And I, for years, have supported Notre Dame in the idea that, guess what? You guys can do whatever you want if you're Notre Dame. You don't want to give up that TV contract, you're not forced to give it up. You're not the one who has to play ball with the conferences. The conferences have to play ball with you. You got a deal first. You got to the table first. You were the one who set the bar for your own television deal, and everybody else realized they couldn't follow suit because they didn't have the following Notre Dame does. So I've always supported Notre Dame in them keeping their own rights deal because I think that it's fair and they bartered it on their own, and good for them. But they are now at least coming to the table with some sort of negotiating terms. I'll tell you what they are in just a second. But first, a word from our friends at BetOnline.net, your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports development, league reviews, and news, including this year's Major League Baseball and upcoming playoff race. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports words podcast news this season. BetOnline.net, the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, back to Notre Dame. So Notre Dame basically has now put a number out on the table. Okay, they are saying that they are targeting $75 million in an annual media rights payout if they want to join a conference, right? Notre Dame right now, and this is according to Dennis Dodd of CBS, Notre Dame right now averages $15 million per year, their TV deal, but is earning $22 million annually due to the backloaded nature of the contract. So they're essentially asking, if I'm reading this correctly, 3 times that amount in a buyout for them to join a conference. Which Power Five is going to do that? None. They've made it so exorbitant. They've made it so outlandish that literally they will not find a partner to do this deal with. It's that simple. Like they're just not going. Nobody's going to come to the table with that kind of buyout of the media deal. The only way to get Notre Dame to a conference is to literally squeeze them out. Like if you're another Power Five school, if the Power Five schools have to collude and get together to never play them. Period. That's how they get them out. Because guess what happens? When Notre Dame ends up playing Ball State, Western Michigan, Rice, Central Florida, pick another team, San Diego State, and that's their schedule for 12 games. And sure, they'll go 12-0. But if they lose a game, one, they're going to be considered out. And two, if they're playing all those weak teams, nobody's going to want to watch them. That's how you get them out of that deal. It's the only way to get them out of that deal. It's the only way to get them to come down from the number. The powerful, all that Stanford, USC, all these schools that traditionally play Notre Dame would essentially have to collude together and say, well, we're not scheduling. Period. Sorry, our deal ends here. And for all those deals that have already been re-signed about how often they're playing, they're probably 4 or 5 years away. So Notre Dame can sit pretty for another 4 or 5 years to decide what they want to do. But, again, that's kind of the way it looks like this is going to go down for Notre Dame. Unless somebody wants to pay them an exorbitant rights deal, then they're going to stay independent. Now, does this mean a little bit that Notre Dame may at least be open for some negotiations? Like, could you come in at 50 million and say, look, you're still making double your money? We'll pay you 50 million a year, not 75. It could be. It could mean that they're open for business, but I just don't know what that really looks like. And if Notre Dame is really willing to negotiate, then that's a whole different conversation. Maybe if that's just a starting off point for negotiations, then maybe you have something. But still, it's a pretty tall order for them to even come down to something reasonable that schools could assume. Because remember, a lot of these schools, the SEC, they all have to chip into their SEC network, their media deal, along with ESPN. The same thing. Fox is about to pay $1 billion, or Fox is about to get $1 billion from the Big Ten for their television rights. So, again, lots of big numbers rolling around out there, and not necessarily companies and businesses and schools that want to spend more. All right, coming up next, the Braves' schedule post All-Star break is interesting. And what will it look like leading them up to the trade deadline? And would that tell how aggressive Alex Anthopoulos is going to be? That's next right here on A to Z on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Search Locked On Sports Atlanta.